Hello and welcome to City Beat. We are your central source of news and information for the city of Rocky Mount. I'm your host, Tamika Keenan Norman, and today's show is all about SC2, or the Strong Cities, Strong Communities Initiative. It was actually established in 2011 by the Obama administration to create innovative opportunities for communities that need some economic growth. So joining me on the show today, I've got Assistant City Manager Tasha Logan Ford, also Stuart Lee, who's been our federal team lead for the past year. Stuart comes to Rocky Mount from the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service in Raleigh, where he served since 2004. So they're going to talk to us a little bit about what SC2 is, some of the accomplishments of the initiative, and where do we go from here. So first, we're going to start off with you, Stuart. Tell me a little bit more about SC2 and what your role has been as its federal team lead.
Well, as you mentioned earlier, the Obama administration came in during the housing bubble that burst, and then a financial economic recession across the country. And some of the first things that you saw that the administration implemented was the Reinvestment Act. Mm-hmm. Following that, they took a deeper look at some of the communities across the country that had been affected well before 2009 with decades of changing economic growth and outlook and the investment at those communities. So the administration said, well, how can we take a proactive approach to helping these communities? And they created the foundation of what we call today SC2 by saying, well, we can invest in these communities by bringing federal agencies out of their silos to work together and work with local communities to implement really the priorities that those communities want to implement, instead of the other way around, where you traditionally see federal agencies come in and work in those silos and say, here's programs that we have that will help you. We stepped back and said, how do we work together with those local communities and really develop a canon of programs and opportunities around the local needs of the local communities? Mm-hmm. So for me, I came in to fulfill that role as a federal lead, to listen to the local priorities, local needs of the communities, working with the manager's office, city manager's office, to identify exactly how do we start to match up some of these opportunities, and then work together to deliver outcomes based off of local priorities.
And you had to work fast because you've been here, a year, right?
It will be January 5th of 2017, which is my last day in the city, will be my 1 year mark. And I had to work fast. There had been a previous federal lead for the first year, so this was the second year. So it was a hit the ground running and a great opportunity. Mm-hmm. And the city manager's office and working with Tasha has been great. The transition for me was a lot smoother than I thought it was going to be. But the city has a tremendous staff and was able to really present the ideas in such a thorough way that it actually was easy to really hit the ground running. Based off of the work and the groundwork that they had really laid well before they even became an SC2 city. Mm-hmm.
And part of being an SC2 city was to have a federal team lead for the past 2 years, you leaving in January. Now, we started this in 2014. It was really a great time because we also at the time were implementing our visioning and strategic planning process. But Tasha, why did we apply for the SC2 to become an SC2 city, and what were some of the goals, those priorities that Stuart mentioned?
Well, I think it was an amazing opportunity for Rocky Mount, especially when you think about the size of our community and the size of the other communities that had participated in the program in the past. Unique things about Rocky Mount is we were one of the smaller communities to participate in the SC2 initiative in terms of our population size. And we were also a community that was the council manager form of government. Typically, the other cities that participated had strong mayor systems in place. Mm-hmm. So it was a little bit of a transition for us to figure out how to work with the structure that we have here in Rocky Mount. But when we looked at the 8 goals that were identified in the visioning plan, and then we had some conversations with several community partners as we were preparing for the application, the city decided to focus on 3 of those goals from the visioning plan to move forward with our SC2 application. We wanted to focus on job creation and talent development. We wanted to look at how do we grow our regional food economy. And then we wanted to look at the quality of life in underserved neighborhoods. And when we looked at those three things, we realized there were several groups that were working in those areas. There were some successes that we'd had, but also some challenges that we were facing in terms of new regulations that were coming down, thinking about our capacity to be able to take on some of those projects. So we focused on those three areas. And when we looked at the criteria for how communities were being selected for SC2, the economic condition for Rocky Mount made us a key city for the program. Looking at our employment statistics for our community, educational attainment, all of those things were factored into the decision-making process. There were 91 communities that were invited to apply to SC2. And for Rocky Mount to be one of those selected, I think is just amazing. And I think it speaks to the vision that was set out by our community members when they participated in those study circles, and they identified what were those priorities and established a vision statement of really what do they want Rocky Mount to look like moving forward. And embracing that as a community, I think really helped to put Rocky Mount in a much stronger position when it came time for us to apply for the SC2 program.
And you talked about, I think you said 90 cities who were invited
91,
to apply.
yes.
Yeah, and we were one of 7 that was selected.
Exactly,
so,
exactly.
Yeah.
That's something to be proud of, especially to get that national recognition for Rocky Mount.
And not only that, if you think about it, with such a competitive program, it speaks to the passion. It's something that I've noticed since I've been here is no matter where I've been, whether it's talking to community members, nonprofit groups, people within the city, different groups around Rocky Mount, even local municipalities that are near Rocky Mount, our federal partners, one thing that you can feel from this community is their passion. And I think it comes through when Rocky Mount applies for opportunities and tries to partner with new organizations. You can feel that passion in the applications that are put out from the city to apply for these opportunities, such as SC2. It's so vibrant and exciting, and I think that came through the application process.
It's also a matter of passion and preparation.
Yes.
I think that this community really laid the groundwork. They did the hard stuff up front of trying to get agreement about how we want to move. So that passion that they brought to the table and going through that process, but the plan was laid. So it was a matter of, okay, let's pick this up and figure out how can we move pieces of it forward.
And it's interesting, you talk about what you've learned here in Rocky Mount. I don't know if people realize it, but your office was right here in City Hall. So for the past year, you've been immersed in Rocky Mount and what it offers. So I'm glad you brought that out as well. Let's talk a little bit as well about some of the things that you've accomplished. Tasha mentioned some of the relationships that have been established, but what would you say some of the biggest accomplishments have been within the past 2 years?
It shouldn't seem like a deep question, but it is. And I was thinking about this the other day, since I'm coming towards the end of my tenure here. As Tasha said, with the preparation and the passion, I think the accomplishments are tangible, but also more profound, and not to be, big-headed about it, or wide in scope about those comments. But I think you see things as was mentioned earlier with dealing with local foods and a food economy and jobs. And there have been some great successes with the Local Foods, Local Places plan, the Monk to Mill feasibility study that was developed, and then some of the partnerships that have come out, especially with the federal agencies coming into play and getting a great view of Rocky Mount. But I think on a much deeper level, the thing that I see as the greatest accomplishment, which will live well beyond my time here, is the lessons learned. I think for Rocky Mount, having the insight into the federal government with kind of the unhinged approach, and not to mean that in a wild way, but having inside access to really how federal government agencies and departments view opportunities that are presented to partners and how they apply for it, and having that insider view of that approach, that process, and then the lessons learned from the federal side of really how we need to build our programs to better address local priorities. And those are things that you wouldn't get any other way than doing a program such as SE2, where both partners can really have a deeper understanding and appreciation of what's expected from each other, how to work together, and then how to build a stronger relationship moving forward, just from kind of stepping out of these silos that I was talking about and working one-on-one, and really working to address very specific local priorities. And that's a unique thing for federal governments to work in that realm. And so I think moving forward, the greatest success to me is that there's a institutional knowledge that's going to be passed on to Rocky Mount, and at the same time, that institutional knowledge of how local governments work is being passed on to federal government. And I think from that, you'll see even greater success. One of those things is the new executive order that the president signed for the Community Solutions Council, where they're going to take the lessons learned. And Rocky Mount was one of those examples of how federal partners and local municipalities and organizations can really work together based off this give and take, learn, respect, transfer of knowledge, so that these type of opportunities can move forward and really shape how government does business and how they work together. So for me, I think the greatest success is really that interpersonal relationships that's built and how that works and how to learn from each other. So there are tremendous opportunities that I think have been placed on the ground that will live also well beyond SE2. But I think that there's such a deeper lesson that has been learned from this that will really perpetuate business between government and local government moving forward. And I think that's tremendous. And for Rocky Mount to be a part of that and to really shape how government is going to start doing business moving forward is a tremendous, tremendous accomplishment for the city and then for SE2.
How would you add to that, Tasha?
I think that one thing that we learned was it's important to stay true to your mission. There were several opportunities that we became aware of, and we were quick, and I say we as a city, were quick to reach out to our partner organizations in the community, because they weren't always a direct fit for what the city was doing, but it might have been better for one of our nonprofit partners to help us move that program or that project forward. And I think one thing that specifically comes to mind with me was our summer feeding program, where we were able to really increase the number of feeding sites that were available. You know, we became aware of that program through our partnership with SE2, but we also knew that there were several community partners that were out there that were already working in that field. So for us to serve as the conduit to get information out, I think was critical, and for those agencies to be in a position to be able to respond, whether it was faith-based organizations or nonprofits. They came to the trainings. They were committed to making sure that we were increasing those feeding sites, and that was a success for me. I also think about there was a lot of frustration, I think, early on, because we were looking at additional direct dollars to be able to come into Rocky Mount as part of this initiative. And I think that's what a lot of people were expecting. But by looking at the different programs that were available that they could apply for, I think there was some opportunities for us to be able to use those resources more effectively that were already coming in. New programs that we might not have been aware of, I think was another success of this program. But I can't say enough about the partnership building, and just learning how you may have one piece of the project that needs to move forward, and then it's time to join in with another partner to figure out how we're going to get it to the next level. So that collaboration piece, I think, was critical for us, and I think that we've kind of wrapped our arms around that, and I think that's going to be the key for us in being able to continue moving these projects forward, is continuing to see who are our partners, who do we need to work with to move forward.
And I think it was interesting too. I know in the early part of the program we had a workshop, and I don't remember the name of it, but we had HUD, we had some of the federal agencies to come in, and then we had some of our nonprofit organizations to come in as well to share ideas. I thought that was great.
We did a couple of those. We did one that was focused on different health outcomes. We had folks there from the Center for Disease Control. We had folks there from Food and Nutrition. And that was held at the Booker T Theater. And we also had several partners come to the table with our local food, local places. I also think about the HUD workshops that we had, because one of the critical issues that we face here in Rocky Mountain is looking at the challenges that we face with housing. We have an aging housing stock. We also realize that there's a need for both affordable housing but also market rate development. But having the HUD workshop here in Rocky Mount really, I think, was eye-opening for some of the agencies that want to get into development, and also for those that have been developing in our community for a long time to be able to understand some of the new changes and regulations that were coming down from HUD. So that information sharing that took place through those workshops, and being able to meet the decision makers that are at the federal level, you just don't have that kind of opportunity where those folks are in your community participating on that intimate level that we had here doing this process with SC2. That doesn't happen.
It's a conduit opportunity, if you think of it that way. And that was with what Tasha was saying, and some of the things that I was saying, is there's a deeper partnership that was built through this opportunity. And I think the realization that through those partnerships you can create this conduit opportunity for information exchange, where you're not solely focused on one partner to deliver the outcome, but you're looking to partners to help spread information, to build a coalition through that conduit of SE2 or a Community Solutions Council, which again has been established through the executive order. I think that there's such a deep respect that I have for this process and what's been accomplished in Rocky Mount, and there's so many, I think, accomplishments. It's hard to put them.
And I think another one too is just the National Resource Network. And there were 3 meetings that the City of Rocky Mount was able to participate in as being an SC2 community, and we were able to visit with other SC2 communities that were participating in the program. And it was a very small conference. And you would go and talk about what the challenges were that you were facing. You would hear those cities present on projects that they were moving forward. And what I liked about those convenings is that a lot of the cities didn't have it figured out yet. So there was still time for us to get together and think about those strategically as a group. And when we were talking about just looking at the number of vacant lots that we have in our community and how do you repurpose some of those properties, that's something that bigger cities, when we went to Detroit, I thought that we may have been overwhelmed by some of the things that we see in Rocky Mount. It's nothing compared to what you see in some of the challenges happening in Detroit, or what you saw, or what I saw when we went to New Orleans, of how they took those things and were figuring out what works in our community. It wasn't that there was a one-size-fits-all, which I was really glad to see. But when we sat down with those cities and then our federal partners that were there, it was more of, well, let's talk about what it looks like in your community, and then let's figure out what do we have available that could assist you. So I was very appreciative of that openness that I saw through those convenings, learning from those other communities, but also from our federal partners, of not saying this is the program that'll fit, but more of, let's talk about what needs to happen, and then let's see what we have that could help move it forward. There wasn't a pre-described this is what you need to do.
Gotcha.
And I think that allows the flexibility for the community to still have ownership and decide this is what we want to be. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, when I think about all the things that are happening in Rocky Mount right now, we are very much defining this is who we want to be moving forward. Mm-hmm. And I think that we have a better foundation with the partnerships that we've been able to build over these last 2 years to make that happen as we're moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of moving forward, a lot of momentum just by talking to you all. How do we continue that momentum, the relationships that we build? How do we continue that?
We're going to keep another federal employee here for another 2 years.
That would be good, wouldn't it?
No, but we're preparing for that because it's a lot to wrap your arms around, mm-hmm. And it's all the things that are moving are not just internal to the city of Rocky Mount. So many of our community members are moving on with different aspects of projects that have started. But we have created a structure within the city of Rocky Mount just using staff members from several different departments. We really try to identify the departments that touch different segments of the community. And we've created an internal SE2 capacity building team. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I'm very proud of because the members that are on that team are thinking about the community in a holistic fashion, not just based on their departments, but what are the priorities that we identified as SE2 first, but then what are the priorities that kind of cross all of our departments. So as different opportunities come through, whether they're for technical assistance or whether it may be different grant opportunities that we learn about, that team is taking those and with the understanding of the goals that were set forth through the Twin Counties Vision and Strategic Plan, and also looking at council priorities that are established every mm-hmm. year, and then looking at the departmental goals that are set. That team is fleshing out those different opportunities that the city should pursue. Mm-hmm. And if it's one that doesn't necessarily fit with the city, then we'll continue to share those with our different community members to let them know that it's available for them and that they could take that opportunity if they would like to.
Mm-hmm. And I know for me, I'll still be in North Carolina, mm-hmm. and Rocky Mount's now got a little bit of me here.
Yeah.
And I consider it a home away from home. And I'm not going to, I know that when January 5th comes around, I'm not going to stop that chain of communication. And as I hear of opportunities, I'm going to continue to forward them on. And then also, Rocky Mount has actually made a tremendous name for itself in federal government. Mm-hmm. There's been so much information shared with the successes that have gone on here that Rocky Mount's had the unique opportunity to etch that name in each of these agencies through this partnership, this SE2 partnership. So with each of the agencies that have been involved with SE2, I think that they will continue to also share the opportunities for financial and technical assistance. So that chain of that conduit mm-hmm. Definitely is not going to end on January 5th.
And there are staff members with several different agencies that we talk to and that we've had a chance to build relationships with, and they know about the projects that are going on in Rocky Mount. Especially with the strong partnership with EPA, I've just been really amazed with how they have stepped in and have been able to provide assistance with our Moncton Mill project, with our Brownsfield projects that we have, and one that I was not as familiar with, but with their CUP program, which links community colleges and four-year institutions with their students to work on building kind of work plans around specific mm-hmm. issues. And we have 2 right now that are in progress, one with Nash Community College and one with Wesleyan. So I think that this partnership right there with EPA of how we continue to have projects that are moving forward, although Stuart's time with us will be ending, those things are still moving, and we're still having conversations with staff members that are in those agencies to keep those going. So I think that we'll still be able to have projects moving, our internal team will have to start assuming some of the responsibilities for that in addition to all the things that we do every day. It will not be the same as having one person that is on it every day, but we'll continue to do that.
And they've already started because they came by my office, a few team members.
Yes, they are interviewing.
They have asking, what are some of your department's priorities? Where do you see yourself in a few years? And so if they hear of these opportunities, then they can tell us about them. So I think that's a great idea. So they're already starting.
Yeah, and part of that is about messaging. Whenever you have opportunities that or grants that come available, even technical assistance, you have to be able to tell the story. Because when we were talking about different departments to interview, one of the first ones is that, we need to make sure that we talk with our public information officer, just because of the wealth of information that you have in terms of news that's happening in the city, but internal to the city, but also externally, and how do we communicate that message to make sure that citizens are aware of what we're doing, and being able to make sure that there's a strong link there. Our team, that was one of the first ones that were on the list of, we want to make sure that we're continuing to get the message out as we're transitioning to this next phase, and want to make sure that the public is still informed about how we're moving.
I think that's another thing that has been learned through this opportunity with SC2 is how you look at your approach to working with partners. A lot of times nonprofits, local municipalities, private landowners think, well, I want to work with federal government to get assistance for the big picture. And there's so many opportunities through each of these departments and agencies, and there are many programs that offer financial and technical assistance that really address a part of that big picture. And taking the approach that this local capacity team is taking of looking at the individual pieces and then matching up opportunities to those pieces that build the big picture really is the best way of moving forward, because you're really taking the time to analyze all the steps and processes in between, prioritize what's top of the top priority, maybe one that's a little bit lower on your priority list, and then taking the time to also say, well, where's capacity and what partners better fit. It gives you a deeper dive, which seems like a lot of work up front, but on the back end, the results should really speak for themselves by really taking the time to match up the right opportunities with the right part of the right piece of that big picture. I think that's going back to one of your earlier questions about successes. I think that's a really big success to be able to say that our approach to these partnerships has been fine-tuned a little bit, because there were already strong partnerships there to begin with.
And we're waiting to. I'll be really excited, and I'm already proud of our internal team, because they took the opportunity while we were still working on the structure of how we would work together. But they took the initiative to go ahead and apply for a program that could potentially help the city of Rocky Mount with some stormwater mitigation efforts. It could also help with some of our parks and recreation facilities. And there was also an opportunity where we realized there was a need for it, but it was not, central to what the city of Rocky Mount provides in terms of addressing some health disparities in our community. So when we saw that opportunity, the team reached out to work with a local nonprofit so that they could submit an application on behalf of the health piece. So it will be a few more months before we found out whether or not we were successful in that project, but that team hit the ground running. They saw those opportunities. They identified quickly what were the ones that we should focus on internally, and then which ones we needed to bring in a partner, and provided some support to get that application going. So if we're successful in that, we're going to have some work to do with that team in the next few months. So we're keeping our eyes open for that one. But there's some exciting stuff that we have coming down the pipe with that. But and also with our internal capacity team, there's one that will be kicking off, a project that will be kicking off that's focused on our neighborhoods. We're going to have a volunteer team that's going to work to help us do some maintenance, some deferred maintenance to some of our houses that have been sitting in certain neighborhoods, whether it's boarding up, cutting grass, pruning some of the bushes and trees, things that we cannot do through our community code division, but really that would help with the aesthetics and the curb appeal of some of our neighborhoods. So that's something that we know will be starting in the spring of 2017. So we were successful with that, and that was part of the efforts of one of our members for that internal capacity team.
Wow, so they are on a roll.
They're working.
They're on it, yeah.
No grass grows under our feet. we are running.
It's really exciting to hear about the things that have been accomplished and what's to come. It really is. So I thank you all for being a part of the show. Anything else you want to add?
I really just want to thank the members of our community that really took the time to participate in the visioning process. It's been a few years since that was done. And different groups are moving forward at different paces, and I think that's how the process was designed. It's a very organic process. There's a lot of autonomy between those team leads on how they want to move things forward, but we would not have been successful as a city if we did not have that clear mission statement that was identified for our community, if we had not taken the initiative to say, okay, we want to change the trajectory of where Rocky Mount is going. And that was not something that was done just by the city or just by the local government. That was something that was done by the community members that live here, that care about Rocky Mount, and that have passion for their community. And I think that, the thank you should go to all of those people that have been working for, behind the scenes for years to get us to where we are today. And where we are right now is that we've taken that plan and we're moving it forward. And I'm excited about what I think the future holds for Rocky Mount because of the foundation that was laid and that we're going to continue to build upon. So I think just, thank you to the community for positioning Rocky Mount where we are right now.
And for me, I'd like, since January 5th is my last day, for me, I want to just thank the city of Rocky Mount and this community for teaching me so much about how to really look at a community and to appreciate all the dynamics of that community and the different layers of a community, and teaching me how to respect that. There's so, as I mentioned earlier, and the things that Tasha was mentioning, there's so much passion and vision and drive and determination here in Rocky Mount, that getting here and being exposed to it and being welcomed taught me how to really take the time to understand, listen, and respect. And it's a lesson that I will never forget, and I will take with me through my career, is just how important it is to take the time to understand a community and learn how to respect and appreciate where they are and where they're going. And it's a valuable lesson, and I thank Rocky Mount for that.
And we thank you as well, Stuart. You've done an excellent job. You really have. I'm going to miss you.
I'm going to miss you too.
I'm going to call him.
Well, thank you all for being on the show today. And thank you as well for tuning in to another edition of City Beat. Very exciting stuff to hear about what has been accomplished as a part of the Strong City, Strong Communities initiative. And we are looking forward to hearing about some more great things as a part of our capacity team. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of City Beat. I'm your host, Tamika Keenan Norman.